Okay, so hello everyone. I'm an engineer here at the ITV project. It's my first talk. I hope it's going to be nice and cool, and you're going to enjoy. So without further introduction, let's get started. So today's topic is CSS-in-JS, basically in the React. So the talk itself is going to be split in the 5 parts. Basically, it's like brief introduction to problems of CSS, because I think you all know them, so it makes no sense to spend a lot of time there. Then how these problems were addressed before the CSS-in-JS. And then CSS-in-JS solutions, like its features, maybe its problems, the frequent asked questions, and at the end of the day, the future of the CSS-in-JS, how bright it is, it's cool or not, whatever. So, problems of CSS. It's going to be a lot of emojis, so excuse me for that if you don't like them. So the problem, the biggest problem is that at first it was designed for documents, not apps. So because of that, we have a bunch of these problems, which is basically appear later in the future when we start to write applications using our web, HTML, etc. So it's globally scoped. It's really hard to reuse because of that. It's kind of easy if you know how to do it, but if it starts to become like thousands of lines of CSS, you probably will end up with a mess. It's leaking. It starts to become a problem maybe even more when you start to use, for example, Bootstrap. It has a lot of global styles. Then you import something like calendar from other place, and it's just start to just leaking one to each other, and it looks horrible. Or sometimes good. You like them. So. Another obvious problem that we all, as JavaScript developers, are suffering is that it's not programmatic. It means that you cannot just have if there, you don't have the for, you cannot calculate something. You can, but using calc, but it's quite limited. So it's a problem. It's not programmatic at all. It's not modular. It means that if you want to use some nice drop-down from the Bootstrap or semantic UI in your React application, you need to take the whole CSS out of that, or if you're crazy enough, you're just going to go copy and paste the needed CSS to optimize that. You have to not import 35 kilobytes of CSS. So it's kind of obvious problems that CSSs have today. And it's also developed slow because it's part of the web platform. It means that it's takes a lot of time to be implemented in browsers, etc. So it's developed slow. How these problems were kind of addressed and improved. You all know these beautiful things like preprocessors, CSS preprocessors, like less stylus, whatever. So they solve some of the problems, they improve the syntax, they introduce some nice mix-ins, so you can calculate, I don't know, color depending on other color. And it was amazing, it was cool, it was back in the day, probably in 2010 or something like that, not sure. But it solves some problems, but not all of them. So it's still not quite modular. You can achieve some modularity using Webpack and all these loaders and cool stuff, but it's still not perfect. So it solves some problems, but some problems preserved. So it's non-modular out of the box. You can achieve some of them using some post-CSS magic and configuration stuff, but it's still not perfect. It's quite complicated, basically. It's still not componentized enough. It means that it's just still living outside of the component. I'm talking about React today. For sure, we all use, like most of them, I think, using React here. So it's still not componentized enough, and it's quite not good. It means that, it will require a lot of class name manual work. So if you have a lot of class names, you need to trigger all this stuff depending on the props, if it's changed, whatever. So it's like a lot of manual work, which looks quite not beautiful in your code, which is kind of messy, basically. It's still global and can leak. Actually, it's still preserved in CSS-in-JS, to be honest. But at last, if you follow some rules, it will go on totally, or you can figure it out. It's like life hacks all the time. But CSS-in-JS is not solving it 100%. You still can break the things. But then you're probably stupid. And reusability is still not perfect. It's still kind of string. It's still kind of hard to find this string, then use this class name, then another one, then keep track of all the stuff in your tons of files. So it's still not perfect. It's still quite hard to track the extensions, etc. So what if we would like to have a solution which will fix them all, or at last, like most of them. And we'll introduce some others, but anyway. Let's see. So it's a CSS-in-JS. It's a glorious one. So the main libraries, CSS-in-JS libraries on the market right now, the most popular one is these three. It's style components, emotion, glamorous. The main difference between of them is that they use different type of definitions of your styles inside of the JS. So the style components, the first one is actually this emoji is the official logo of it. So and for two others too, basically. It uses template string literals, a new feature that ECMAScript 6 JavaScript have. So it's nice that you can just use the CSS that you get used to, and it's just cool and nice. Glamorous use object react inline styles notation like objects, you know, with camel case stuff, etc. And the emotion supports both, which is quite nice and cool. So what's the possibilities here? A lot of people thinking that it's inline styles, it's like, it injects everything inline. It's not. It's actually not. It was before, but it's not longer a truth anymore. So you can here have media queries, keyframes, animations, pseudo classes, nested selectors, like in SAS, for example, you can use ampersand stuff and all this kind of stuff. It's JavaScript, so you basically have all its power. You can use lots of, what's JavaScript have? Babel and Webpack optimization for production. If you would like to have some more optimization somewhere, you can use them. But it's not necessary, which is cool, because it just works. You import these libraries and it just works. Total isolation if old global CSS approach is not used at all, or you can figure it out. Easy theming support is just like breathe and nice and perfect, and I will show you later how. Another is just like full interoperability with existing CSS, so if you still have a lot of CSS, you can easily work with it and use both of the approaches. Inject global styles, you can still inject global styles by the solutions if you know what you are doing, basically. Full support of styling third parties components. Extend API for easy reuse styles, and React Primitive, which is another amazing thing. If you have a React Native application and you have React application, you basically write your styles quite like once. It lasts for some very simple stuff like buttons, labels, whatever. And then you can just use it in React Native, which is extremely powerful. Also, you can use them in React Sketch app, if you heard of it. It's an amazing tool by Airbnb, which helps you kind of programmatically render the sketch, your components in the sketch, and style them, and fill it with the real data if you want to, like change the local, whatever. So it's kind of powerful. You can watch on the internet if you want to. It's cool. It's endless. The powerful thing that you come up with because it's JavaScript world, you know. Let's show you a little bit of a demo. Let's get started. Okay, so we're gonna start with a basic one. This annoying thing. So basic. So just 1 second, it's so dry. So basically you import styled function, default function from the styled components here, and then you just say styled.h1, and it will give you the h1 which is styled with these styles. Same like wrapper, styled, section, and these beautiful ticks, and here's your style. So basically you get these two components and you render them, and here you have it. So it's the simplest one, simple as hell. Okay, another example. I'm gonna comment that one. So it's one. And we'll show up another one. And so basic props. So it's gonna be basic props. Please re-render. Okay. So basic props is basically how you do it when you need to change your style depending on the props which is passed to your React component. So we have the typical CSS here, and then we have this how to name it, injection to your template string. Here's the function which takes the props as a parameter, and then you have, if it's primary, then please render the CSS here. So, and if you have at the bottom, we have two buttons. One button is just regular one, and another one with just flag of primary, and it gets its style. So it's quite simple and great. Okay, let's show another example. Let's show you example of basic extension of the styles. Of the styles. So let's save it. So extension of the style, it's like quite a lot of the code, but don't be scared much. So we are from the previous example, we import the button that we described before, and we just use button extend, and again we describe the style of regular button with border radius of 50. You're never gonna do it, but it looks horrible, but yeah, just for example. And then you override, or not override, but add some more styles to this primary behavior, and so border stars will be 0 peaks. So as you can see, there's the two buttons. I use them at the bottom with these styles that we already written. Also, we have here example of non-styled component button, just regular button that you had before, for example. The only requirement for it to be possible to be styled by styled components is to have class name. So basically, you wrap it this way, you apply some styles, and here we go, you have the style applied to your regular component, which you have no idea about the style component stuff. Also, it's more advanced and you need to read through it, as this, if you would like to reuse styles of the other styled component on your non-styled component. Yeah. So you basically have button, then you say this function with component, and you pass in non-styled component or any other component button, and then you call extend because it returns back here the styled component, and here we go, the simple two styles which is applied here, so the color is changed, and it still preserves the primary behavior. So.
I have a question. Can I ask a question?
Yes, maybe at the end better.
Okay.
Yeah, so because it's gonna be long. Okay, another example. Another example is keyframes. It's gonna be simple. So keyframes is going to rotate. So yeah, we describe the keyframes using keyframe function from the styled components, and it returns the name of this keyframe, and then we use it in the other styled component, and bam, you have it. It just works. Okay, another example is of the media queries. This one's going to be a little bit tough, but I think it's fine. Media queries. Here is we just describe the function. Don't read it pretty much, but basically it creates the helper function, which helps us describe our media queries this way. So we have a pixels here at the top, yeah, and then we have here content style component with this media desktop, and it will be the styles for the desktop. It will be the styles for the tablet and phone. So basically, if I will change the size of that. Yeah, so as you can see, it's changing. So media query is supported, no problem. You can still write it manual way like you did before, but you can use awesome function that you write yourself. Okay, another example that I'm going to show you, it's theming support. Theming support works perfectly as everything else. So basically you wrap the component with a theme provider, and here you have the theme, right? With the main of the color, like medium sea green. And in the component you use color will be this prop theme main, and color and border color will be this. Yeah, so and default props of pale violet red. So we have button outside of the theme provider and it's have no theme, and that one is have it because it's inside of the theme provider, so it's use this these props to render. So it's powerful. Again, it's simple as hell and it just works. Okay, so some more maybe example. If it's not enough. I'm gonna uncomment lots of them so we don't spend time on that one. So polish it. Polish it, just simple introduction, is the library which contains a lot of helper functions like SAS has, like lighten, complement, and all this kind of stuff. But it's working for all CSS-in-JS solutions. So basically, yeah, we have a button, that's typical one. On hover, we have a background color of lightened by 10%, pale violet red color that we have at the bottom. For complement, if we have complement prop, we have background color of complement pale violet red, and background color for hover lightened 10%, complement of the pale violet red. So at the end of the day, here we have at the top, yeah, so if you hover over it, you see that lighten is applied. So again, it's quite powerful and cool. Comparement, just like brief comparement, and probably I will end up with this example because it takes a lot of time, probably get bored. So how you're gonna do, for example, the component in the old times if you would like to have it styled. Yeah, you will have lots of code. You will probably use inline styles that React have, and it's gonna be mess. You're gonna use the class names, tons of things. Figure it out yourself. It's gonna be messy anyway. So you'll have CSS. It's just lots of work for no reason. Team support, as I said before, is just working here, and we have styled old one like CSS installed. You're gonna see all these examples. I'm gonna share it after the presentation, so you probably take a look at yourself. And now we're gonna skip to others example and show you the difference between glamorous, that I said, this object notation, and the styled components notation. So styled components, you already see it a lot. I'm not gonna dig into it. Glamorous is exactly the same, except that you describe your styles using objects. So it's quite simple. And then, yeah, if you have in this function, the function, it gets the props, and you get render it, and you return again another object, and it's behave exactly the same. So at the bottom we have this style it and glam. Yeah, if we remove primary, for example, it just works. Yeah, so it's not primary anymore. Okay, so I think it's enough of examples today. For today, I think it gets boring. So, what's the problems, right? You're gonna ask me. So there is a few problems probably that you think of, like weak editor supports, right? Because it just shrinks an object. It was true. But not anymore, because WebStorm is supported by default right now by the plugin. VS Code Sublime Text Atom supported there, no problem. Formatting, in WebStorm it just formats it like CSS, basically. I'm not sure about others editors. You probably say no, that's why I will probably not use it because of that. And actually editors also doesn't matter, because if you use Prettier, it formats the CSS in template string literals automatically, which is very powerful. And it's like, oh, we don't use it, and then I will ask, why, what's wrong with you? It's amazing. Just, you'll see, like, just Google it, and it's an amazing tool that all teams must have. I'm sure 100%, it's amazing. So you're not impressed yet, and you'll say, it's stupid to have CSS-in-JS. And then I'll say, okay, but what did you were saying about JS6 a few years ago? It's a templates in your JS, it's horrible, it's stupid, it's HTML in your JS. It doesn't work. So it's the same thing. And yeah, usually people, if are not impressed, they say like, performance! Performance probably is the problem. And you're a little correct here, a little correct. So styled components, like this library itself, performance in the benchmark with billions of nodes and all this kind of stuff is weak. A little bit, yes, quite weak. But it's not realistic at all. The good news that Emotion and Glamorous have this like benchmark, not realistic performance. It's only 5–10% slower than CSS modules, which is for today, I think, is one of the fastest solutions for the styling your components, with all this tricky stuff and isolation, sort of. And yeah, good news is real-world performance is good for all solution, and nobody have any problems if they don't, I don't know, do some dashboard with billions of graphics or whatever. And also there's the hacks to improve it even further for Emotion, for styled components, and all these solutions. So you can hack it a bit, so it will be even faster using Babel plugins and Webpack plugins. So what of the solution I recommend at the end anyway? It's styled components, and I will explain why. First of all, it's the most popular. It's 11 stars in GitHub, means it's a lot of contribution, it's well supported. It's just like tons of tooling is developing for it. Yeah, so for example, Emotion have only 2,000 and Glamorous have 2,500 or something, so it's like huge difference. Another thing is that authors of these nice components API was the styled components authors, and then everybody would just take this approach and copy and paste it. It also supports React Native and other renderers, which means that's cool. Yeah, Emotion doesn't support it, Glamorous support it too, so it's amazing jest and other test runner supports. You can do like tons of nice unit testing of your tests. Like, is it appear on your component or not? So it's quite powerful and cool. And yeah, a lot of tooling is already done for it. You can use styling for it. It works for Emotion as well. It has the best documentation, and performance is a matter of time, and I'll explain why again. Because Emotion actually used the same CSS parser as the runtime CSS parser as the styled components. It's just a matter of time when the styled component will figure it out and will improve it, or it will probably not gonna do it, and I will explain why again. It's because of the future. So the main problem with CSS-in-JS right now is that if you have a lot of components written in styled components, it means that you have a dependency to styled component runtime. And if other guy, for example, will use emotion or another solution to style its components with CSS-in-JS solution also, it means that if you would like to use these components, you will need to pay the runtime cost twice. You will need to import emotion, you will need to have glamorous in your runtime, which is costly. And the biggest topic that all the authors of CSS-in-JS right now talking about is to, and they already have a draft of this, it's to create interoperable style transfer format. So it promises even further improvement in performance. It promises this full interoperability between the CSS-in-JS libraries. It means that you just take the component from other library, no matter, and you just use it with your only one runtime that you prefer, like style components, for example. And yeah, and also this style transfer format, whatever, will make optimizations even further. For example, to reduce the amount of your CSS code up to 30–60%, depends on your code base size. And yeah, just a nice slide to show how. Basically, you have, for example, font size used in both places, right? And height used in two objects too, and display inline block. So there's already Electron style CSS-in-JS library, which is already doing that, which is on the build step, I think, not in runtime. Figure out all this repetitive stuff and then generates the separate class name for it and then compose them together. So it's just reducing the amount of styles like significantly. If you have a lot of them, it will be like shrinked a lot. So basically, I think it's all for today. Maybe something missed, but that's all, folks. You can ask the question. I think it was long, but I try hard to make it short. So that's it. And links for the sources and sandbox for this speech is also available. Amazing articles. I must, just recommend it to read. I think it will be shared by Justina in 1 hour or something. I will give it to her. So yeah, that's it. Thanks. Yes, we can return back to code.
Basically, I had just a question about the style component API, but I don't think it is worth to mention right now. Or maybe you can.
Yeah.
So there were really two questions.
Yeah, that's fine.
Actually, this is not a question.
Yeah,
it's a statement.
This is not.
Okay, describe it.
Style component had something like extend.
Yes.
And you also used styled wrapper for components that weren't styled components.
Yes.
And what's the difference really? Isn't because from my point of view, it looks like you can use it in Exchange.
I think the only difference there is just synthetic sugar or something like that. Or I still didn't test it out, but I think if you use extend, you just reuse the class name from the previous guy and then attach the new style. So it's basically generate one class name and another class name. And when you wrap it, it's kind of just copy and paste the previous styles and add another one. So you end up with rules, and the same rules probably used somewhere around. So with extend, it's just really extend the one, you just add it, and it basically ends up with the two generated class names attached to this component.
Okay, so the second question, you had the example with extend, where you started to override styles.
Yeah.
And I can understand it. It is pretty nice if you override the particular rules, but what about the functions? For example, you have the first example here, line 6, line 7 you are overriding border radius, but in line 9 you are actually providing a new function, and is there any mechanism that is verifying if, for example, in the parent component you didn't, for example, I don't know, change the border radius?
If I will change the same rules that was applied in the parent, it will actually override them because it's still, style sheet, cascading style sheet.
So it will just have higher priority because it will be...
But I think there is some optimization, so it will be not like attach the old one and then attach a new one and they will be overridden because of the cascades. I think there are some sophisticated things that actually do that. Another thing that I didn't mention is like server-side rendering also is amazing, and it's actually solved a lot of problems of the performance. And also, I think I heard a lot of mentioned stuff from the author of the style component that they also have some sort of caching if you use the server-side rendering, and they see which of the styles is most used, so they automatically generate some sort of critical CSS for you by default, like cool stuff.
Another question. This with component is once again just a syntactic sugar. Cannot I do, for example, a double-nested style?
Double-nested styles?
So, for example, when I use the style and I wrap style in style, no, it won't work.
No, it won't work. But this is just syntactic sugar because it's this like with button with components basically wrap this guy, but it's just underneath it's usually higher order component which passing the CSS class name to the wrapped component. And this one is just replace that under the hood with that under the hood, so it gets injected. So it's very nice if you use, for example, a React router link and you have a regular link, and you don't want to make copy and paste styling. You just make with component link, and it will automatically, you just reuse your regular link style, which is kind of handy.
Okay.
So yeah, it's just to style. You can also here put the braces and put A, and it will be a primitive, for example. Or so yeah. And if you want to override third-party components, they should have CSS class name property passed down, because otherwise it won't work.
Okay.
So documentation will answer all of your questions, because it's a very good one. It's a very good one.
I have technical data.
Yeah.
Okay, I have one question. How about those dynamic attributes you are applying to the styles? Because you showed that there is a way to control from the JavaScript some attributes that later they will be applied to the CSS attributes. And what is like the underneath? How it's working?
Oh, I think it will just dynamically will generate class name each time you have some, I don't know, slider which will change the width. It will under the hood like go through, find like, oh, we need another one, and we'll create the class name. Maybe it have some sort of template to make it faster and some sort of optimization for this case. But I didn't dig that much in that. So,
okay.
But you can do this amazing thing that you have that one, then you put the slider and it's changing the color, or it's changing the whatever width of that.
Okay,
so it's, but I think they have some sort of template in which they're just passing in the new value.
So
for
you are not
optimization.
aware of, let's say, those CSS custom properties are.
I know the new thing that is already supported.
Okay.
It's already supported, I think,
Right.
because it's just CSS. Basically. Here, just CSS, you can use all the CSS features before, after, ninth, all this kind of stuff with ampersand and nest it. So you can nest it like you do in stylus and all this kind of stuff. But it's still CSS syntax. There is something, some guys are think to reinventing the wheel and create, for example, styles. So you just kind of configure it somehow, and you can use style syntax if you just are crazy about the styles. Stylus, for example, or SAS or whatever. But everybody says this kind of makes no sense pretty much, and not worth investing my time on that.
Okay.
So yeah, try it. It's amazing. It's very good for the usable components. It's just like perfect.
Yeah. So another question from myself is how about the final bundle of the CSS? How it's generated? Is it exposed as a separate file?
No,
no?
it depends.
Depends.
For style component, they still don't have this functionality. They have Babel plugin which everybody used by default if you use style components, because it adds some nice nice handy stuff, whatever optimizations. Okay, so the question was
external CSS file.
Yeah, emotion. Emotion by default, first implementation of emotion was without runtime for this class name parsing, whatever. So you need to use Babel to actually transpile, and it will just make external CSS for you. Today's emotion, they found out that actually performance benefit was none or nothing, so they said like, okay, we're gonna use this tiny CSS runtime parser, and it will be better because you can use it like in without the Babel plugin. So they decided to rewrite it, something under the hood, and they actually right now use it in the runtime, and it's more performant than extraction of the class name, which is like wow. For me, it was weird. and it's actually faster.
Yeah,
it's weird. I know, like they decided, and I just watched the new version. They said like you no longer need Babel plugin. I was like, what? And it's actually more performant.
It sounds like a step back.
Yeah, but it's actually faster. So you never know. Yeah, you can still use extraction if you want to. Yeah. You can put the true in their plugin. It will still work if you want to for some reason, but if you don't, you just use runtime and it's still fast. That's how.